This week on Quality Digest Live, we learn how Industry 4.0 influences the total cost of quality.
The total cost of quality.
That's right.
Plus, what can writing a novel teach you about leadership? Well, we'll find out when we come back.
This episode of Quality Digest Live is sponsored by Inspection Arsenal from Phillips Precision, the only lean inspection fixture solution featuring quick swap fixture plates and a variety of unique work-holding components.
And welcome back, everybody, to Quality Digest Live for February 23rd, 2018. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making the news in the world of quality. I'm Mike Richmond, publisher of Quality Digest.
And I'm Quality Digest Editor-in-Chief, Dirk Ducharme. I think there is this tendency to take for granted that academic papers have all been vetted and peer-reviewed and so forth, so that we have confidence that the research is solid, not necessarily perfect, but solid, and we tend to believe that other researchers have read these papers and they try to pick them apart, and so make sure that they're rigorous and that all the T's have been crossed and the I's and dotted.
Scientific method, all that
the
stuff,
scientific
right?
method, all of that, and all of this is to, is to lead to published research that we can rely on, at least rely on as much as possible, given the nature of research. There's always some doubt in there. So the Georgia Tech article on 1 in 5 materials chemistry papers may be wrong. 1 in 5, caught our attention. A new study that compared the results reported in thousands of papers published about the properties of materials used for carbon dioxide adsorption found that 1 in 5, 20%, had results far beyond the error bars normally used to evaluate study results. Thousands of research papers yielded just 9 compounds for which 4 or more independent studies allowed appropriate comparison of the results. Professor David Scholl at Georgia Tech School of Chemical and Biomolecular Engineering said this: "At a fundamental level, I think people in materials chemistry feel that things are reproducible and that they can count on the results of a single study. But what we found is that if you pull out any experiment at random, there's a 1 in 5 chance that the results are completely wrong. Not just slightly off, but not even close."
Wow.
1 in 5 is like completely, like just the results are just like nonsense, right? They don't make sense at all, right?
Interesting. Okay.
Now the problem with that is you say, well, who cares, right? Now in some research, theoretical research, that kind of stuff, the impact of this maybe is annoying. But here we're talking about materials properties that companies rely on to make decisions. So, the problem is that you may have, a company may rely on maybe 1 or 2 studies to choose a material that they think is right for their particular application. But if the odds are only 1 in 5 that the study they look at, that 1 in 5 that the study they look at is wrong, they have pretty good odds of choosing a material that doesn't work for them, which obviously mean that it sends them down the wrong road, and who knows how far down they get into their development before they realize, hey, this is just this complete garbage.
Yeah.
And, this is costly, right? If people are depending on this. This isn't just researchers. This is companies going out, finding a paper to make a materials decision, and then making a decision based on that paper, thinking that everybody's done their job, right?
Right.
Okay, now, whether the results can be more broadly applied to other areas of material science awaits additional studies, said Scholl, but the results of this study, which was supported by the U.S. Department of Energy, were published November 28th, 2017 in the ACS journal Chemistry of Materials. So you can look this up and get more detail on it. Now, the study is related to material science, but I think there is a broader warning here. When you base a design decision or a management decision or a financial decision or whatever kind of decision based on one piece of research, one data point that hasn't been duplicated, and that's kind of a key point, you may be taking a serious risk. What you want, if you're looking at research to make your decisions, what you want is research that has been verified by other studies, or research where the methodology has been duplicated and gotten the same results. So you either want other people have looked at the same thing, conducted their own experiments, different experiments, come up with basically the same results, or they have taken your experiment and duplicated. Because usually in academic papers, they give you the methodology, they give you everything so that you can go out and duplicate the same study. So you want to see that other people have done that same study the same way and come up with the same results. If you just base things on one data point, no matter what it is, one research paper, what do you got? You don't know.
And you know, and me as a complete amateur, not even really all that well studied of an amateur in this field, 1 in 5 doesn't really seem that outrageous to me. I mean, understanding a little bit about how research works, I mean, they're not saying that this research is an ironclad finding. It's saying our research indicates, generally speaking, right? I mean, it's research. It's not.
Well, it depends. In this particular case, these papers reporting the chemical capabilities of a material.
And that's not.
So it wasn't theoretical.
It's
like this material does this. And the fact is that it didn't.
So is that, I mean, and I don't want to get too deep into this, but is the intent here that this was just a mistake? That it was sloppy science? That the editors didn't take enough look at it?
Yeah, it was sloppy.
The blame is on the researchers themselves.
Well, the blame on the researchers and the blame on, although I don't think he goes into this a lot, usually academic papers are supposed to be peer-reviewed and all that kind of stuff. So there is I think there's plenty of blame to go around. But also, honestly, just like I said at the end here, some of the blame relies on, if you're going to use research, don't use one piece of research. I mean, I don't know if you remember this. This was quite a while ago. Remember the whole cold fusion? This is a good example of when it's done right. Remember there was the whole, I think it was the Japanese, the Chinese, said some scientists had done cold fusion. This was like 10 years ago or something like that.
Right.
And they published the paper, they published how they did it, how they got the results, the whole thing. Nobody was able to duplicate it.
Right.
So that is what's supposed to happen, is you're supposed to say, okay, let's see if we can duplicate this. Well, it wasn't duplicated, so then people started speculating. Well, there was a problem when they're set up. They started picking apart to say, well, why did they get those results? Obviously, something went wrong in the experiment because nobody's been able to duplicate it, right? That's when it's done right. And that's what you're looking for as somebody taking this. If somebody had said, oh, great, they've done cold fusion, now we're going to run off and we're going to design a product around this.
With just that one finding.
With just that one finding.
Down a blind alley.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Good stuff there, Dirk.
Yeah.
Thank you, man. All right, well, according to analysis on the MIT Sloan Management Review website, frameworks such as patent protections and technology standards play an important, albeit mostly hidden role in the dissemination of industry-altering products and services. But in a worrying development, these fragile frameworks are increasingly being assailed by regulators, academics, and some special interests as well. Innovation-based technology standards are under threat is the name of this piece, and it was written by David J. Kapos, who is a former Undersecretary of Commerce and Director of the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. We'll be linking out to the article in this coming Monday's issue of the Quality Digest newsletter. Usually we cover in the show the stories we covered, but
this one's coming up.
This one's coming up, so there's a little teaser for you. Now, a good way to think about this issue comes down to patents, the issue of patents. Although many assume that the patent system is primarily intended to benefit inventors, in truth, there are rather powerful forces trying to chip away at patent protections. Kapos states that there are those, both in industry as well as academia, who believe that if inventors are well protected, such protections will increase the costs of technologies that ultimately flow down to consumers. However, Kapos points to research that shows that weakening these protections slows the pace of technological advancements and can actually thus add costs and inefficiency into the system. It's a little bit of a subtlety there. Now, an example of this can be found in 5G wireless telecommunications networks, which have the potential to connect people and devices much, much faster and more efficiently than ever before. However, there's currently no industry standard for 5G deployments. And although the FCC has deployed the spectrum for 5G, there are still major technical hurdles to be overcome. For 5G to function as intended, for example, mobile systems will require new and faster application processors and radio frequency devices, among some other very technical issues that 5G will require. Now, these issues can, and believe me, they will be overcome because the financial ramifications of that are pretty humongous. But disincentivizing the inventors who are going to make it happen probably isn't really the best way to achieve positive results in the quickest and most effective fashion here. And that's really what it is, who's going to, this comes out of the money, of course. Who's really going to profit from this? Is it the people that really do the initial research, research again, we just talked about, or is it those that kind of take that research, acquire those patents, and then run with it? So it's like, who should really make the money? Who should control that? And what Koplos is saying here is that if you disincentivize the people that actually do that initial research, if they can't get their fair piece of the pie, well, they may not do as much research.
So how are they being disincentivized?
Because those protections for them in terms of being able to monetize their inventions are being chipped away at. Basically, the companies that are going to acquire those patents aren't going to really, they're going to be able to acquire them at much less than their value. If it's potentially a multi-billion-dollar invention, the inventor may get a very, very, very small piece of that. 1% of that may still be a lot of millions.
So why do it?
They're like, well, why do it? I mean, you do so much work. If you're in this space, you may work your whole career and maybe get one real key invention that you can patent that would really be worth a lot of money. But if you can't protect it, if you can only sell it to one basically company that's going to develop it and run with it and make the billions, and you're going to make maybe $1 million. It's like, well, I've worked my whole career.
Why?
It's just disincentive for that. So they're trying. Koplos is saying that there needs to be more protections for the inventors. To do that and be able to patent, and be able to make their money from it, which is a good point, I think.
Okay, makes sense. Okay, well, unless you are a complete newbie to the quality field, you have heard the term cost of quality. Now, kind of in a nutshell, this is the accumulated cost of not creating a quality product. Things like rework, field service, product recall, replacement, that sort of thing. Call it the cost of poor quality. What does it cost you when you have poor quality? It also includes the costs involved in building in quality. It was first described in 1956 by American quality control expert Armin Feigenbaum in a Harvard Business Review article. Now, this sounds pretty straightforward, right? What we have, what have we spent on quality improvements, and what is our cost of poor quality? You would assume that as you increase your quality, as you build quality into your process, you will get less poor quality. And there is a balance to this. You got to, how much money are you spending versus how much cost are you avoiding through poor quality? And there's a trade-off there. But in any case, you do the math and presto, there's your cost of quality. Except, says Stephen McCarthy, author of Industry 4.0 and Your Total Cost of Quality is hard to nail down because of hidden costs associated with poor quality. There's a lot of costs of poor quality that are very tangible, very easy to see. Returned products, recalls, field service, those things can be written down on a ledger. But there's a lot of hidden costs. How many customers have we lost? We don't know. How many customers were customers and no longer customers, or potential customers that decided not to go with our product because they've heard of quality problems. So there's a lot of hidden costs.
And a lot more now than there was when Val Feigenbaum first did this because of social media, Yelp and things like that. I mean, there's a lot more velocity in terms of poor word of mouth.
Exactly. So there's a lot of hidden information on poor quality. Also, the information we need in order to make decisions is often siloed within departments other than quality. Sometimes the information we need lies stranded outside of our organizations in our supply chain, R&D, commercial partners, or worse, what if we don't even know what information we need to gather our cost of quality information? Or what if we know the information we need, but it's not being captured, or we don't know how to capture it? Well, all of this kind of sounds like a job for technology, doesn't it? I mean, we have the potential today, because of technology, to bring clarity around an organization's true total cost of quality, the cost of poor quality and the cost associated with bringing in good quality. McCarthy writes that Industry 4.0 promises to completely digitize and integrate processes vertically, across, and beyond our organization. And will also place customers at the center of the value chain and use data from the field to create a continuous feedback and improvement loop. So what are we talking about? We mentioned technology. McCarthy's talking about technology. Well, one of the hallmarks of Industry 4.0 is its use of data from smart sensors, mobile devices, wearables. All this information is piped into the cloud and then out onto IoT platforms and then straight into your quality management system. This allows you to data mine and see maybe previously unknown or unknowable costs of quality. This is what technology buys you. It can help you more easily shift your costs to prevention activities and avoid producing defective products in the first place, which is really what we want to do, right? As you begin to see fewer defective products and services, you begin to experience a reduction in the cost of appraisal activities as well as the cost of internal and external failures. But to get there, you need a fully integrated digital quality ecosystem. And you might ask, what does that look like?
What does that look like?
Strange you should ask that because there's an upcoming webinar. I like that. Okay. If you attend our upcoming webinar, you'll find out more. To offer more information about this specific topic, Sparta Systems and Quality Digest are presenting the upcoming webinar, Total Cost of Quality in Industry 4.0. That's on Tuesday, next Tuesday, February 27th. That's February 27th at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. Stephen McCarthy, the author of that article of Sparta, will be your presenter, and I'll be hosting, so keep an eye on your in-mail inbox for that and for more information about how you can register. Also, there is a link to McCarthy's article, a link in McCarthy's article that'll take you out to the registration page, and there's also a link underneath the player page down there that you can click. That'll take you out to the reg page as well. But I mean, this is a topic we talk about a lot, is information technology, IoT, all the, the digital workplace, the digital factory. All this is allowing us now to collect information that helps us keep an eye on quality and keep an eye on the cost of poor quality.
Exactly.
And all this information can be data mined and then fed back into the system to hopefully start driving quality further and further and further forward into the whole design and process.
Yeah, I mean, world-class quality organizations understand how critically important this is. I mean, this isn't the kind of thing where you really can afford to not be on the cutting edge of the technology. I'm not trying to make a pitch here for any but I mean,
well, for like a webinar that's coming up Tuesday, you might want to attend. We're not pitching that or anything.
No. But no, I mean, this is clear that this is of a high value for organizations that want to be on the cutting edge of quality. So I mean, I would check out the webinar. I'm gonna. So I would say certainly it's a good webinar for people to take a look at. That's next Tuesday. All right. Well, for any of us who like to pretend that we're writers, completing a novel is sort of a quest for the Holy Grail. To an author, finishing a novel represents a lot of struggle, stress, persistence, and ultimately, hopefully, some insight as well, not only for the authors, but maybe even for the reader. Hey, who knows, right? I wrote a novel. Did I ever tell you that?
No.
I wrote a novel in my 20s and my early 30s and into my 40s now. Spent a couple of years writing a novel in my late 20s and early 30s, and it was not a very good novel. But even a bad novel, even an unpublished novel,
takes a lot of work.
Takes a lot of work, and you get some insights out of that. But what we're going to be talking about is not an unpublished nor a bad novel.
Okay. It's
a good novel. 5 things I learned writing a novel that I wished I knew when I was a CEO is the name of an article from John R. Bell, who is, you guessed it, a former CEO, a global strategist, and most recently, a published novelist. This particular article appeared first in the CEO Afterlife website, and we republish it in last week's Valentine's Day issue of the Quality Digest newsletter because we loved it so much. Publish it on Valentine's Day. There you go. Well, last year, Bell completed and then published his first novel, The Circumstantial Enemy. Now, I haven't read the book, but it's getting really terrific reviews on Amazon. I read the Amazon reviews. There's a few dozen reviews on there. It can't all be his friends and family. And there's really good reviews for it. And this was an 8-year journey for Bell to bring the book to fruition. And to do that, he needed to rely on many of the traits that made him such a successful business person. And with that said, he also learned a lot along the way, and many of those lessons are things that really would have benefited him, as he says, in his former career as a boss at a consumer packaged goods company. So let's run through these 5 points that he's talking about. We'll show them on the screen, and I'll kind of explain a little bit about what's going on here, what he learned from writing his book. The first one was understand your audience. He learned the importance of that, because a good author really needs to realize what, say, her readers want and need. If she can't deliver, she won't be a very successful author. Likewise, the CEO needs to appreciate what customers, employees, and shareholders need, and strike the right balance when those things inevitably come into conflict. You know they're gonna. Right. I mean, there's some things you can't just square sometimes, and you're gonna have to figure out, well, is this about our customers, is it about our employees, is it about our shareholders, other stakeholders, who's really involved here? So you gotta understand that. The second thing he learned was what his characters wanted, right? I mean, all good three-dimensional characters, even the ones that aren't always central to the action, have motivations that cause them to do what it is that they do. And as much as possible, CEOs should strive to invest the necessary time and energy to learn about the intrinsic hopes and needs of the company's employees. That's a really important one. The third one here, which we can look at, is he learned to kind of take a breather at the crossroads of indecision. An author is generally going to face writer's block. It happens to everybody. It happens to all of us. Sure. And you're going to have writer's block. Even when you're writing a 1,000-word column, you're going to have writer's block sometimes. And when he does, it's often beneficial to let the work sit for a little while, maybe days or even weeks if you have that much time, before you pick it back up. Now, CEOs, of course, have a pretty powerful motivation, I think we can say, to make quick decisions. But the occasional breather might provide deeper and maybe really valuable insights, depending on what the situation is and what decisions you have to make and when. Taking a breather and looking at it and letting it breathe a bit can really be valuable. The fourth thing is he learned to trust his readers. And this is one I can speak to very much, having written a book. Again, not a good one, and not an unpublished one, but this is one that you're gonna deal with, not so much in a short form, but in a long form. Bob Seger called it "what to leave in and what to leave out" in one of his songs. Because as a writer, you never want to leave your audience saying, "What?" I'm not understanding. So you want to be clear. But there's also this thing, you want to let them figure it out for themselves. When no reader wants to read something where it's all just served up on a platter, you let them work it out and work through the ramifications of what your characters in your story are doing. That's a hard thing. It's a very fine line, again, between what to leave in and what to leave out. And from the perspective of a CEO, it's kind of the same thing. I mean, you want your people to learn and to grow on their own. You trusted them, when you hired them. You trusted that they had the intellect to figure things out, right? Right. So if you trusted them then, well, why would you give them everything now? Let them figure things out for themselves. It's really important both for readers and for employees. And the fifth and final thing you learned was that you want to regard yesterday's prose as kind of a small victory. A novel is 100,000 or more words generally, and no writer that's ever lived or ever is going to live, believe me, is ever going to pick the perfect 100,000 words in the perfect sequence. Any book you ever want to name, there's little imperfections in there that are just inevitable. But you can't let some mythical ideal interfere with the pride that you take in your effort, in your progress. You may not write the great American novel, and you may not lead your company to the Fortune 500, but you can take time to celebrate small successes anyway. If you can't enjoy the journey, why are you doing it? If you can't enjoy the process and learn something from writing a book or from leading a company, why are you even doing it? You're not going to get the benefit. The people that you're leading or the readers that you're sharing your vision with aren't going to get anything out of that. So, enjoy it a little bit. Celebrate those small successes. Like I say, the greatest book ever written had imperfections. The worst book ever written had a few things here or there that were valuable, that were okay.
What was your book about?
Oh, it was about a girl and a guy and a relationship. And
been there, done that, okay.
I was in my 20s, come on. But in any event, really good article. And I haven't read John Bell's book, but I will recommend it just based on what the Amazon review said. It looks like a really interesting book there.
All right. Riding to work this morning, and one of the things that I didn't hear about that until this morning. One of the aftermaths of that horrible shooting in Florida. Obviously, a lot of people angry at the NRA. So some boycotts started. Some boycotts about businesses that work with the NRA. So there was a company that I think does one of the rental car companies has backed out of a contract with the a discount contract with the NRA. A couple other companies have backed out, and this got me thinking about boycotts and kind of how easy they are to organize today. Because in the past, if you wanted to do a boycott, you pretty much had to do it through mainstream media. You had to somehow get a reporter to come out and or you had to get a political figure saying we should boycott whatever, right? But now. One of the biggest boycotts, I guess, happened on Twitter, and it kind of went viral. And it was, I thought I printed out the right article here, but I didn't. Michael Skolnick, LifeLock, that's right, Semantic. So this guy started a Twitter campaign saying, hey, LifeLock has got a relationship with the NRA, boycott Semantic and LifeLock and all that, and they did. And Semantic withheld their or pulled their association with the NRA in terms of this discount. Is this a good thing? Should consumers via the media, via social media, have the power? Is that a good thing that almost instantaneously can cause companies to sever ties just because they don't want the bad publicity? In the past, boycotts built slowly, and a company would have a chance to do some back and forth. But now it's like, bam, you're hit, and you've got to make a decision like immediately. Oh my gosh, do we keep this relationship? Do we break this relationship? Because you've got this viral campaign going on. Is that good?
It is a very complicated issue, what you're asking, because there are two very fundamental rights coming in conflict. There's a right of people to express their opinion, consumers, voters, and there's the right of businesses to have free and unfettered business relationships. There's something called tortious interference, that you can't get involved with business relationships between businesses, relationships. But consumers can get involved in those. Consumers can say, well, to heck with that. I want you to not support that.
Or I'm not going to buy your product.
Or if you're, we don't want you to have advertising dollars from that company. Or if you are an advertiser, pull your dollars. Yes, consumers, users, people should have the right to do that. It's an important fundamental right, I think, to organize and to make your opinions known.
But is it good?
That doesn't matter.
Okay.
It doesn't matter. Well, because there's plenty of things in society that you would call good that I would call bad. Okay. There's natural law that says that people should be able to have their voice known. Good governance is a series of listening to people's voices in certain ways, and governance doesn't just include government, it also includes, this larger societal issues of how you do business and voting with your dollars. So good doesn't matter. Should it happen? Yes, absolutely it should happen. It's an effective way for people to have their voices heard. I mean, if it affected us, I would, as a business, I'd be very upset about it.
Sure, right.
And I would look at why we were being boycotted, and I'd say, well, is that something that makes sense? Do I feel like there's something there? I mean, if we were supporters of if the NRA was a business that gave Quality Digest a lot of dollars for some reason, through advertising, let's say, my personal ethos as a publisher is I say, I'm going to go out on a limb. I don't like the NRA. I'm a fairly progressive person. I'm not a gun owner or shooter. I don't really believe strongly in assault rifles. I believe in the Second Amendment, but I don't believe
suppose
half of our readership.
Or no, suppose half of your advertising, or a third of your advertising, or a quarter of your advertising came from them.
So
that's a lot of money. It's like, whoa, that's a lot of money to give up.
It's your business model.
Your business model.
If your business model is threatened at that level, you got to think long and hard about what your business model. I mean, because if your business model doesn't align with your ethics, something's got to give. I mean, if I'm the publisher of Quality Digest and that much of our money is coming from something I really don't believe in, I shouldn't be the publisher of Quality Digest. Right. You know what I'm saying? I mean, at some point you got to make a decision as to what you believe in. bring your ethics to work and vice versa. It's a really hard issue you're asking about. I mean, again, yeah, you look at these things in real time and they happen very quickly. The velocity of a protest online can happen within hours.
Well, let's take a slightly different twist on this, because I just thought of this. So we're talking about right now, let's say the boycott for against some of the NRA corporate partners. This is legit, and you know, the people who are protesting this, you know, we can look them up. We know that these are probably legit people, and so, you know, they're trying to influence the populace by asking them to boycott, right? How does that differ than the Russians trying to influence the populace, even though it was fake, you know, fake postings and all that sort of, using social media, the same thing. I mean, you can say, well, one is a bad player and the other is a good player, but they're both doing the same thing. Well, they're trying to influence.
For one thing, they're not citizens. They're commenting on something they don't have really any say in. You know, if you're a Russian citizen, if you're working for the Russian oligarchy and the Russian government, well, I guess it's free speech all over the world.
Well,
but
that's what I'm saying.
I mean,
it's the same.
But they don't have a stake. They don't have any skin in that game. They shouldn't have skin in that game. They shouldn't be able to really have a lot of influence in an American presidential election. Just like Americans shouldn't have influence really in elections in other parts of the world too. To be fair about it.
Right.
But I mean, there is a difference there.
So you're saying it's not the method. It's
who's involved.
Who's involved.
It's the motivations. It's a really complicated issue because again, I may say the motivations are wrong coming from one position. You may say the motivations are very right coming from another. I mean, abortion is another huge issue that's very similar to this. I mean, the NRA, gun rights, Second Amendment rights, and abortion rights are kind of like flip sides of the same coin in terms of the passion of the people that are on either side of them, that you don't give an inch on either side. I mean, you know, NRA advocates, Second Amendment advocates say, well, we can't at all chip away at gun right ownership, even though many of us would say, well, assault rifles make sense not to be owned, maybe. You can't own a bazooka, you know, I mean, and abortion rights activists on the other hand would say, well, we can't chip away at any abortion rights. Even though most of us would say, well, you really shouldn't be able to have an abortion after a certain period of time. I mean, it's not right. So it's like, well, is there anybody in the middle that looks at this logically and says, well, let's look at what is just the most sensible position? Or is it just people retreating to their corners like they normally do and say, well, we can't give an inch?
And social media right now is kind of the way to influence.
And it doesn't help.
Social media is the way to influence people either way, to kind of maybe tilt. If you're on the fence, this is a way to tilt you one way or the other.
The organizational structure of social media is fantastic for doing that. The velocity of it is a problem. I mean, in terms of organizations that are dealing with this, companies that are suffering from a boycott, for whatever, if you think that boycott's wrong or right, if they're having a problem with it, their people need to decide many times within hours.
That was my point. It's just it's so quick that you have to be ready to respond to.
It's risk management. I mean, this is part of risk management too. You need to identify these risks going in, and again, if you're doing business with certain companies or certain organizations, maybe it's Planned Parenthood, maybe it's NRA. If you're taking dollars from those organizations, that needs to be a part of your risk management strategy. So,
you got to know people are going to be contrary to that.
Exactly. If we have politically sensitive things we're doing, and we're taking dollars from potentially politically sensitive organizations, and it's part of our business model, we need to identify that as a risk to our core operating structure, and be ready to put things into place to identify it, either to defend why you're doing it, or again, if you can't defend why you're doing it, say, should we be doing that? If that is our business model, is that the right model for us to be in? Complicated issue, Derek. That's a tough one. All right. Well, that's our show for this week. But before we go, we'd like to thank our sponsor. Phillips Precision encourages you to protect your profits with Inspection Arsenal. This industry-changing fixture solution speeds inspection with its quick swap, lock and load fixture plates and a variety of unique work-holding components. Inspection Arsenal can be used universally across all inspection equipment, including CMMs, optical comparators, vision systems, and gauge arms. It's lean by design, and returns on investment take just hours. Break the inspection bottleneck with Inspection Arsenal to improve profits right back to the spindle. For more information, visit online at www.leaninspection.com or click on the banner ad just below or just to the right of this video player screen.
There you go. And that is it for today. Don't forget that Sparta Systems and Quality Digest are teaming up to bring you the webinar Total Cost of Quality in Industry 4.0 next Tuesday, February 27th at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. Stephen McCarthy is presenting, and you can register via the link at the end of his article or right down below the player page down there, or keep an eye on your email. We'll hit you several different ways about that webinar coming up, so watch that. Okay, we will see you next Friday.
Have a great weekend. Bye.